Loss of Life by MGMT. So, Kylie, you're gonna kick off this discussion.
Yeah, I think MGMT is one of the most curious bands to me in that I think I'm in the rare camp that I think they get better um, with each album, because I think back to Oracular Spectacular, and that came out right when my wife and I started dating. Not to age myself here, but she worked at Urban Outfitters, and that was one of those albums we just referred to as Urban Outfitters music because it was in the 5 disc shuffle and just played all the time. And then between that, we used to go dancing at this now defunct. Well, I think it might still be around, but it's an indie dance night in Denver, which at the time was kind of uh, its own thing. Not usually what you'd go to for club music. But yeah, I mean, Electric Feel and Kids and Time to Pretend. Like, honestly, if I never they're straight bangers, but if I never heard those songs again, I would be, just fine with it. And then Congratulations to Follow Up, which I think was just a wet fart at the time. I think was just so uh ahead of its time. Uh, musically working with Sonic Boom from Spaceman 3, who's had a nice resurgence with the Panda Bear collaboration in the last few years. And I think Spaceman 3 is more appreciated now than they were, a decade plus ago, and in between their stints, down to the 90s Trapper Keeper cover art of Congratulations that was well ahead of the 90s revival that we're still in right now. MGMT uh, was that the self-titled one was the one that wasn't quite my thing, but then the last one, which kind of I know they'd gone on hiatus, and I generally thought, well, they're probably over their you know early aughts indie buzz band. That might be it. But Little Dark Age just really caught me off guard and was probably one of my favorite records that year. I think it was 2018. I think that came out. Just very good memories of that time with that album. And so, you know, this new one, uh, I was honestly pretty excited about, and loved the second single, Bubblegum Dog. I still I still love this song. It's it's just so ridiculous, but I think really sets the mood for this album, which is uh much more mellow than those big bangers for the fans of that stuff. It's not really here, but this is just some really damn fine songwriting and psychedelic pop that I find myself reaching for over and over. Carl, Christine, and the Queens, that feature I enjoy much more so than the LCD feature on Idols. And I mean, people in the streets is just like feels very uh, relevant for the times. And this album rarely ever gets out of like second, third gear, but I think as MGMT have kind of always done, is they're a band that people are late to appreciate um, what they've released here. And this, kind of reminds me a lot of another buzz band from that time, Foxygen, a little more in their alley um, than the stuff we've heard from MGMT. But yeah, I think this is it's an awesome record, and it's got my boy Nels Klein on Mother Nature, just great guitar work on there, and one that I would say is definitely in the top end of my early year end list. Just love this record. I think especially for a second half to their career, these two albums have just been flawless so far, and I'm finding myself enjoying it more than their earlier work.
Carl, how did you find Loss of Life?
Yeah, it's like, as Kylie kind of touched on, I always find MGMT's career trajectory oddly fascinating. You know, as you say, they burst onto the scene in, what was it, 2007, 2008? And, as someone who was 17, 18 at that point, I can tell you there probably wasn't many bigger bands at that point in time for like me and my friends, as you say, those three singles, Time to Pretend, Electric Feel Kids. But yeah, that whole Oracular Spectacular album was just everywhere, blasted on the stereo in our sixth form common room. As you said, you go to an indie club night, you'd probably hear all three of those songs
Every time.
yeah, during the course of the evening. And I mean, the big memory for me was like we did our first Glastonbury in 2008, and MGMT were the one band, like our group, we all made sure to see. They had like two sets across the weekend, and I think definitely my friend ended up doing both of them. I only did one, which was on the Park stage where they brought out Harmar Superstar.
Yeah.
Who also
There's a time capsule.
Yeah, he also turned up with Griff Reese as part of Neon Neon over the course of the weekend. So I inadvertently saw Harmar Superstar twice that weekend. But yeah, as you say, brings me straight back to that time. And so I kind of always have a special place for that record. Without needing to go back to it all the time, as you say, it kind of got played to death to a certain point. But yeah, as you say, that after that they kind of went away for a few years, came back with Congratulations, which I think, although it had its moments, the title track especially, I remember really loving. There was that big long kind of. I remember they released a single and it was like 13 minutes long or something. I can't remember what it's called. But yeah, it was ultimately, I think it was like a bit of a curveball and didn't, as you say, resonate with the people who enjoyed their debut. But yeah, obviously their self-title came out just after that, and I think, I listened to it once and never went back to it. Like you said, kind of thinking, that's them done. We'll probably never see from them again after that. But yeah, same to you, Kylie. When they came back with that Little Dark Age record, I think it was the return that they needed. One of the, like you say, one of the better albums of that year, and it just gave them a new lease of life. Which is oddly strange because I feel like, rather than capitalizing on that kind of renewed momentum that album brought, they went away for another 6 years and waited until everyone had forgotten about them again. And then, out of nowhere, last year, dropped Mother Nature and announced that they're bringing out this album, Loss of Life. So, it's hard to say what this album's going to do for MGMT's career, because at this point, because they might, just decide, we're going to have another 5-6 years off. But I think where Little Dark Age was a welcome return, this feels like them really rediscovering who they are, the type of band that they want to be, and almost finally being like content with it. I think you almost get the sense that they were managing between what people expected of them and what they wanted to do themselves. And I think they kind of strike the balance with this one. That, the first half is fantastic. Mother Nature, I loved instantly. It sounds even better as, like, obviously you got the intro, but it's like the first proper track here. Going back to the, guitar work, this one reminded me of like Sergeant Pepper era Beatles. Just like a great energy to it. Obviously mentioned Dancing with Babylon, which is probably the poppiest track that they've done since Oracular Spectacular. This spacey mystical ballad that you'd think would sound out of place, but it doesn't. You know, Christine and the Queens bringing their own flair to it as well. You mentioned People in the Streets, just magical as well. It's like the Technicolor Sonics in the back half of that track that kind of, yeah, again, it's another one when listening on the headphones, it just really kind of comes through. And then, yeah, Bubblegum Dog. Yeah, love that song as well. So I think that makes like a pretty faultless first 5 tracks, you know. Some phenomenal guitar work again, bit psychedelic. Bubblegum Dog is a bit grungy as well, but you know, just all brilliant, those first 5 tracks. For me, the second half maybe isn't quite as strong. I think it does tail off slightly, but there's a couple of great moments. Nothing changes in that back half. I think that's the pick of the bunch, you know, those jazzy horns and just the general kind of sentiment on that song, quite stripped back. And then the title track right at the end, I think that's a really kind of playful finale to the whole record and a nice way to kind of round it out. But yeah, it's the other kind of tracks in that back half that haven't quite gripped me as much as that first half yet. But I think it's just great to have, you know, MGMT back again, you know, forging sounds as captivating as they are for the most part here. You know, I think for me it'll be hard to look beyond the nostalgia of Miraculous Spectacular, as that album is kind of so ingrained into, you know, that time of my life. But yeah, in terms of the songcraft and how accomplished it is, I'm with you, Kylie. You can easily argue this is the best they've ever sounded.
And I'll join the chorus of praise. Yeah, really enjoyed Loss of Life. It's interestingly, it felt like where it took me was just one where you're just enveloped by it, and kind of what I hoped the Smiles album do, basically, to give a comparison to last month's one, and where that one didn't quite wrap me up, this one did. You know, I'll just briefly, I was at university with Oracular Spectacular, so we've got Kylie courting, Karl at school, me at uni. And yeah, like I loved Time to Pretend. The other ones were fine for me. But it was, yeah, decent album. And then, yeah, I only caught back up with Little Dark Age. So it's interesting how that one seems to be the one which has re-engaged fans sort of a decade on. And then, yeah, following it up with a gap, and then this, and pretty much, you know, all you're saying there, Karl, in terms of the first half being just solidly very, very good. The second half, not quite as good, still very enjoyable. But the 2 highlights of Nothing Changes and Loss of Life is pretty much what I had here in my notes. And I think if you look at the lyrical content, there's a lot about, you know, philosophy, really, you know, those big questions and very interestingly written sort of ruminations by MGMT here, which I think their lyricism shines through. I love the cohesion of the album, which, like I say, it's that enveloping nature of it, which just carried me. There's quite a bit about love as well, not like always so obvious, apart from with the song with Christine and the Queens, which is, you know, as kind of straightforward as they get on this record. But yeah, reading through that, and also that kind of adaptation, I got the sense that, and I don't actually know whether this is the case, but I assume it is, that either one or both of them are parents, because there was quite a few kind of, you know, that I wish I was joking song where it's like, yeah, Disney on Ice, that's my that's my Everest now in my life, you know, and yeah, so I think in some of the lyrics, because they are not the most straightforward, maybe a bit like how the Shins lyrics, which I find similarly beguiling, but in a very positive sense. That's what I kind of gained from Loss of Life, and obviously, you know, Life and Death as well, which goes back to the philosophy. So yeah, I think they really delivered on what they set out to do here, and yeah, it's just really, really enjoyable. Glad they're back on the scene and that we can kind of still be talking about them, you know, 15 years on from when they first came out. with their kind of indie sheen. But, you know, you look at contemporaries at the time, like Klaxons fell off a cliff, really. You know, Enter Shikari have kind of reinvented themselves from that similar-ish scene, I suppose. And they're still going strong. And then MGMT, yeah, I like what you said there, Karl, about how they kind of like just come in every so often to remind you that they're still around and still creating things, but don't feel that need to be doing it so regularly. You know, and that sort of gives off a sense that they're comfortable about what they're doing. You know, they're just going off in their own direction, and as you say, Kylie, kind of quite ahead of the game in how they go across this. You know, to make a very pleasing overall discography. Although I can't really speak firsthand knowledge there, and definitely makes me want to go back to some of those the middle part of their career and see what I was missing. Particularly Congratulations. That was strange that I never picked that one up, but then again, not many people did, which is yeah,